All right, so we are getting towards the end of our curriculum. We're kind of checking off all these boxes. So the first, let's see, first 4 weeks, we focused on the left side over here where we tackle JavaScript and Python. We introduced some front-end development with HTML, CSS. We did some back-end development with SQL and Postgres. And then we were using Django as our ORM to kind of facilitate the databases for us. So that was, again, the first, let's say 6 weeks were Django related. So I think I should cover this part. Then the last couple of weeks we've been focusing on React and with a little JavaScript in there. And then now we're going to be kind of combining React and Django to create what we call full stack development. So Django as a framework is the focus for today, where we actually create an API ourselves. So we've been using some third-party APIs, right? We use the Open Weather API for something. We use the Google Maps API for another project. But what if we want to serve up data from our own database, right? So this is the use case where we have our own unique data. Maybe we're creating like a database with favorite Pokemon characters or something. If we want to service some data to our application, we can't just use any old third-party API. We need to use our own API because we're the one managing the data. So that's where we're going to be using Django as an API to serve up data to a front end eventually. But today we're focused on Django. So let's kind of go through those motions. So again, we're just been going through the curriculum page, more or less. I'll try my best to kind of stay with the curriculum page, but if you want to follow along, probably a good chance to do so. We won't be going too fast. It's going to be kind of a refresher and going back to Django projects and then kind of adding on to that. All right, so with that, I'm going to go for a new Django project. So make directory, let's call this Django wine API. Let's cd into that. And let's get going. All right, there's my VS Code. So we're going to create a new project from scratch. Hopefully you guys remember all the Django steps. If not,
Ankur, I have a question.
Quick refresher. Yep, go for it, Guillermo.
So before, did we only learn Django ORM, or did we learn part of the Django framework earlier? And this is a different part of the same Django framework.
I think we learned the Django framework. So I think the ORM is when we're doing our Django queries, just working with models and databases. And then the ORM, I think, the framework is where we created the front end also with HTML templates. So I think we learned the framework, but now we're just doing a little bit more with it. Again, Django is really, I guess, multi-capable. There's a lot to it. We touch probably like 30% of what Django can do. There's a lot out there that Django is capable of. We'll be talking about something called Django REST Framework in the next couple of days. That's just another library on top of Django that we can use for our needs. I looked into something called Django Channels. If you're interested, we don't cover this. I was just kind of curious if what's possible. So Django Channels is the idea. So it's getting sort of off topic, but normally with HTTP, it is a client that can make a request to a server, and the server responds whenever a request is made. However, the server can't automatically communicate with clients. Like if a server wants to like notify clients, that capability doesn't really exist with HTTP. There's a concept called WebSockets, which allow for bi-directional communication, where the server can actually push out messages to your clients, and clients can still make requests to your server. So there's something called Django Channels, which allows you to do that. Again, WebSockets is the underlying, magic trick there. But we don't cover that, but it is possible to have bi-directional communication with your server and clients. All right. So I'm going to create a Django project. Hopefully we remember, but if not, we're just going to get a refresher here. So first thing I want to do, as always, with a Django project is create a virtual environment. So I'm going to do Python-m VNV, and then I want to name my virtual environment. So I'm going to call it .vnv. That's my tradition. All right, so virtual environment got created. Notice a folder up there. Then I'm going to do source.vnv, then activate. All right, so I want to actually use my virtual environment, so I source the bin activate folder. All right, so that should be in my virtual environment now. Next up, I want to install Django. So I'm going to do pip install Django. I'm also going to install psycho.pg for Postgres. All right, so let's give that a run. Luckily, this doesn't take as long when you compare it to npx create React app. This should take maybe like 15 seconds. Well, let's do its thing. Okay, that is complete. All right, so we got a few more steps we want to do. We want to run Django admin, start project, and then we want to give our project name. So I'm going to call this wine project or proj. And I'm going to put that period in there because I don't want nested folders. So let's give that a run. All right, so that created a project folder and a manage.py, right? Manage.py is what we use to kind of do everything with our Django project. We also want to do Python manage py, and we want to create our app. So the command to create our app was start app, and I'll call this wine _ app. All right, so we got our app folder now. So we're chugging along here. I'm going to create a database. Create database. Let's call it wine DB. Hopefully I don't have one. All right, cool. So WineDB is my database, Wine app is my Django app, and then Wine proj is my Django project. You guys keeping pace? All right, so I created my database, I created my app. Next thing I likely want to do is go into my project folder, go to my settings file, and I need to make two changes here. One, I need to add my app to the list of installed apps, so I'll call it Wine app. And then I want to go down to the database section. I'm going to be using Postgres. I'm going to do PostgreSQL. And then the name of my database in this case was WineDB. All right, cool. I think those are pretty much the preliminary items I want to do. I usually just run a migrate for Django's sake. So I'm going to do a quick migration. Oops, mistyped it. All right, so again, these are the default migrations that Django has queued up already. So again, this is like your user model, your permissions, your groups. Again, anything in Django kind of has baked into it. That's what we're kind of migrating right here. All right, and then we could do Python manage.py run server, and we should be up and running. All right, so it's running on port 8000. Let me get a browser window up. All right, it's popped on my other screen. There we are. So if we go to localhost 8000, we should see this page. If everything was set up correctly, Django should be up and running, and we should be good to go now. Any questions about setting up a Django project? And apologies for background noise. There's some blowing leaves outside. Okay, so we are up and running with our Django project. Let's actually go to the curriculum page and kind of follow all the steps they have laid out for us. So we created our project, we named our directories a little different. That should be fine. We started that, created our app. Now we want to create a model. So this is, this is what we usually do, create our models first. So I'm going to my app folder, going to models.py. Now let's create a wine model. So I'm going to do class wine. Inherit from models.model. I'm going to create a bunch of fields. I'm just going to be lazy and copy from the curriculum page. Let's see what fields we have. So we have a wine name. That's a char field, 255 characters. We have a price, so it looks like this can be a char field. We could make that like a decimal or some numeric number, but looks like we want a char field. That's fine. It's been called varietile. I am not a wine drinker, so I'm not quite sure what varietile really refers to. And we also have a wine description. Looks like for our str method, excuse me, we're just returning the wine name. All right, so pretty simple model here, nothing too complex, mostly using char fields and text fields. No really complex data types, so that's easily implemented. We already created our database. I guess that was a little out of order. Let's go with our routes. So we need some URL mappings that we need set up. So we want to start in our project URLs and add basically a pointer to our app URL. So I'm going to add a path. I'm going to call my path API maybe, or what do they call it? They call it wines, so we'll call it wines also. then we want to include wine app.urls. We need to include or import the include function. All right, so that should be hooked up. So now that's basically pointing to our wine app URLs, but there is no wine app URLs that exist right now. So we need to create that new file, URLs, urls.py. I'm just going to copy everything from my project URLs, dump that into my app URLs, and let's modify this. All right, so wines is our base path. I guess our landing spot can be empty quotes. And this could be, let's see, from wine app.views, import everything. And this would be wines reviews, that's wine detail. Again, I'm trying to just regurgitate the curriculum page. So I guess we have wine lists, new wine, wine detail. Let's just copy what they have so I don't make any mistakes. All right, so we have a few paths. Views, if they are importing it that way, I'm going to change it for my needs. All right, so these are our base, our typical CRUD routes, right? Where you can just read all, create, we can update, we can delete. Actually going to change these names because, hey, we are the developers, we get to control it. So I'm going to call that update line. Again, you guys don't know how to make these changes. I'm just doing this for my sanity. Create, put that CRUD naming in there. All right, so we have wine list, which is just the base wines URL. We have /new. Let's make that create. /create should create a new wine. Going to a particular ID should get us to a wine detail page. If we go to that ID /update, we should go to update wine, and likewise delete wine to remove it from our database. All right, you guys good there? Okay, let's go to views. We need to create some views here. So again, just to expedite things, I'm going to copy everything they have here, but we should talk about it and make sure we know what's going on here. So let's get this, if they'll let me. Come on. There we go. All right, so we're copying a lot here, so we need to make sure we understand what we're copying. Let's see. App. All right, so we are importing a few things that don't exist. We need to create some a form. We also are going to create something called a serializer. So something new that we're going to talk about today. So we'll get to that. But here we have our wine list, which is basically taking all the wines. We're serializing the data. So the idea of serializing it is packaging up our internal data into some format where we can kind of transmit it. In this case, we're going to transmit it via JSON format. And that's what our endpoint or our client is going to be requesting from us. They're going to be getting JSON data. Again, this is something we've been doing with other APIs where we get JSON formatted data and then we parse it. Same thing going on here, where we're packaging up our data into a JSON format so that we can send it and have it unpackaged on the other end. All right, so the first new item here is wine serializer. What is this and why do we need it? Again, this is going to contain the logic to actually package up our objects into a JSON format. So to do that, I'm going to create a new file and call it serializers.py. All right, so in this file, I'm going to from built-ins, this is Django specific, import, actually it's, not sure if it's Python specific or Django specific. I think this is from Python. We import something called objects. It's like your base, your most basic item you can create is an object. All right, I'm going to create class wine serializer, inherit from objects, and then we'll do a quick pass here. All right, so we copied our views. Again, always want to make sure you understand what you're copying. So make sure you understand what edit wine, delete wine soon. But this is all stuff we've done before, where we have specific methods and then we react to that based on whatever method they sent us. Serializers is what we're doing now. So serializing is a fancy way of saying convert this data from one format to another. So that, again, we're taking our models, which are a Python object, and we're converting it to a JSON format.
Wait, I'm sorry, Ankur, what is that CSRF exempt property thing or the?
Yep, great question. So if you recall from when we were doing Django projects, we needed to have that CSRF token for any forms that we were using. CSRF exempt says that token is not required. So it kind of just blows past that security and allows anyone to make that request without a token existing in the mix.
So whenever we're working on the actual like HTML page, we don't have to worry about that at a later point.
Yep, you got it. No CSRF tokens if we are exempt from them. So that is a decorator that is being imported. Again, this is just from Django. They have something that allows us to bypass the CSRF validation. So that is what we're using for creating a new line and editing and probably deleting too. Yep. Cool, good question. Yep, always make sure we understand all the code that we copied. All right, so we are creating serializers. Again, this is the idea of just converting data. I'm going to do mine a little differently, but essentially it's the same. We're going to have the same logic at the end of the day. So here, the serializer on a curriculum page takes in data into the constructor or into the init method. And then they have two properties. Properties are just functions that, I'm not sure how to describe them, to be honest, but properties are similar to functions, but you don't need to call them like functions. So if you look at our code up here, notice that we have all lines but no parentheses. So we're not actually calling a function here. That's the idea of a property. So when we do like dot length, for example, in JavaScript, that's a property. We're not calling a function for that. So we're creating properties here. Again, I'm not sure the key benefit here of creating a property versus just having a function with no parameters. But that is something that they chose to do. Again, I'm going to do mine a little differently, just to add some reusability. So let's take a look at that. So wine serializers, I'm going to create a method called def, let's say converts all. Takes in self because this is an instance method. And then we'll do the pass there. I'm going to do def converts one. All right. So again, I'm doing things a little differently. I know sometimes there might be some frustration that we don't do exactly things like the curriculum page, but again, hopefully you guys are able to detect what's going on and how we are approaching it. Again, you can copy this, what they have on the curriculum page, and it will work absolutely fine. I'm just going to do this manually just because we're kind of new to serializers and see what's going on here. So for my convert all, I'm going to pass in some data, and then convert one's also going to get data in it. Let's say, let's call this all items. What do I want to call this? All wines and wine. All right, so convert all is going to take in all wines, and we're going to return basically a JSON format effectively. So we're going to return a dictionary, I guess. So output is going to be an array. That array is going to contain a dictionary. So I guess we want a dictionary of arrays, sorry. So we're going to have a dictionary, and then we're going to have a field called wines, and that wines is going to be a list. All right, now we want to populate that list. So let's do for wine and all wines. Again, it's been a while since you wrote Python, but hopefully you remember your for loops. So we're going to iterate through all wines. For each wine object, we want to add an entry to our output. So how do we do this? Let's say, let's create or what are we creating? Okay, we're creating a dictionary. So let's say wine details is what they called it. What do you want to do here? We want to create wine fields. So for every field that we want to send, we don't have to send necessarily everything, right? We have 4 fields. Let's say we wanted to leave off price, for example. We don't have to include that. In this case, we're going to include everything. So let me just copy that and modify it. So in here, we're going to have wine name. Again, these names do not necessarily have to match. Like I call this name if I want to, but just to match the field, we'll call it wine name. And that would be wine.wine name. Then we have a price that, as you might expect, is going to be wine.price. It's a little tedious, but again, our model is not too large here. Wine.varietal. And finally, description. Okay, so again, we're just going through all of our wines, creating a wine dictionary, and then we want to push that dictionary to our output. So depends wine details. All right, and then finally, once we get done with that process, we want to return our output so that we can use it. All right, convert one is going to look very similar, except we just get one single wine object. We don't need to iterate over all this. So we can just simply do this and return wine details. All right, so just gonna make sure we are doing things correctly. All right, so we're creating our serializers. Yep, we are returning a dictionary. But if you notice, so this is something that I want to modify. If you notice from our curriculum page or what we put it up here, we kind of have some duplicate data right here, right? Like let's say we add a new field to wines. So like let's say I add a color field to wines. Well, then I need to add wine.color here, but I'm also going to need to add it down here. Again, this goes back to one of our basic principles of don't repeat yourself or writing dry code. So in this case, I would argue this is not really dry since I'm having to make multiple modifications for the same thing in multiple places. So Michael, you have a question?
Yeah, Ankur, I'm just curious, did you just run a test or something in like your browser to see if it was returning the right thing, or was it just down there in the terminal?
Yeah, no, this is your Django server will automatically refresh when you make changes to your models or views. So I think it just like got into, it looks like it can't find wine API.url. So no, this is not a test. It's just the server trying to run your code. And if it runs into an error, it's going to report it.
Okay, thank you. Last thing, real quick, serializers.py, does it need to be named serializers? Is that part of the setup?
Good question. It is not required. It is just like, when we create forms, we create a forms.py, but yeah, you can name it whatever you wish to. Good question.
Thank you.
Yep. All right. So again, we're writing not dry code, also known as wet code. Wet can stand for we enjoy typing, write everything twice, whatever the acronym wants to be. But in this case, I don't think we should design it this way. So instead of writing code twice, why don't we allow our convert all to call convert one, right? So that's all what convert one is, just returning one item. So in this case, wine details can be self.convert one, pass it a wine item, and then we could append that here. All right, so I think that should achieve the same thing, but it's slightly reduced code and more, more dry code. All right, so again, I've made a couple changes from the curriculum page. I just want to highlight that. I'm passing in my data objects directly into the methods. I'm not creating properties, but the way the curriculum page did it was create a constructor, pass the data in there, and then call methods to interact upon that data. Either way, we're doing the same thing, so let's kind of proceed on. Last thing we want to do is create our form, because we need to edit data. So our form needs simple enough. I'm going to copy form and create a new file called forms.py. And that can go here. All right, so wine form, again, just remember the structure. We're going to, I don't like the way they do things here. So it's wine app, Django.forms. All right, so we inherit from model form. You can name your form whatever you want to, but we name it, usually go model name and then form after it. So that's wine form. We need a nested class and it has to be named meta. So this is required. Must be named meta. Because Django is looking for a structure with a class, internal class called meta. Instead of that, we've provided 2 field values. One is model. We point to the model we are trying to use this form with, and the fields we want to expose. Again, we don't have to expose every field. In this case, wine name, price, varietal, and description. But again, if we want to leave one of these off, we totally could. All right, so that takes care of our forms. We just did a copy and paste because we've worked with forms before. And if there's any questions about forms, definitely ask. But again, the new kid on the block are serializers here. All right, because I did make some changes to my serializer, I can't just use the copy and paste. So let's make sure we update that. So if I go back to my views, again, I am not passing the data into my serializer, so I'm going to change that. I called mine convert all. I'm going to pass wine into that. All right, so we call our wine serializer convert all. We get serialized wines back, and then we return a JSON response. All right, so we need to specify the data is going to be what we just serialized and the status. And remember, we have HTTP status codes. Anything in the 200 range means A-OK. Anything in the 300s means like a redirect or some other action. Everything in the 400 range means there was a bad, like basically means client error, as in they made a bad request. Anything in the 500s means internal error or server error. So the server screwed up, not the client. All right, we're going to return 200 because everything is A-OK. And then for our wine detail, I'll do the same thing. Convert 1 is what I called my method. Pass it a wine object and then pass that back. All right, that looks fine. Okay, notes. I think we should be good to go. So I've modified my code to the changes I made. Wine delete. All right. So I think that should be all we need to do. Let's make sure we checked off everything. So we created serializers. We created a form. Again, the form just being used for, I guess, convenience. We don't have to have a form, but a form allows us to basically take in data and then automatically convert that data to an instance. So we get a form instance and we can run is valid and save on it to actually save it to the database. Michael Robertson.
I see we're still using post requests for edit and delete functionality. Are we ever going to learn kind of the other types of requests, or are we just going to stick with post request? Is that kind of standard, or
no? I would
why
say
there's
actually
other
not,
type of requests there?
Yeah, good question. It's actually not standard. I think we talked about it on the staff side that we should probably be doing things a little more correctly, because when we get to Django REST framework, which is kind of just like another, again, library that handles a lot of magic for you, that uses the appropriate put and delete methods. So let's actually do that. Again, it shouldn't change anything too much for us. So instead of post, we'll look for a delete. Instead of put, instead of post, we'll look for put. Again, these are just request types. They don't change anything about how the data is sent. Post, put, delete, all those can have items in their body. Get requests are the only requests that don't have anything in their body. Sorry, maybe not the only ones, but from the main 4, get requests do not have anything sent over the body. Again, these are just labels we're putting on. So yep, let's make them post, put, and delete. Again, this shouldn't change anything for us really, aside from how we make the request. So I'm glad you kind of mentioned that, because we should be a little more proper there. Okay, there's also one called patch. I just want to point that out. Patch is kind of cool, where patch is used for where you send a partial update. So let's say I only want to update the price on a wine item. I would send a patch with only the new price, and it'll update only that field, versus a put request. A put request is expecting a whole new update. So you got to send a brand new wine object with whatever you wanted to change in there. If you omit a field, it'll actually remove that field, or you'll get an error because it'll try to update a field without a value. Okay, so we have post, put, delete. Let's take a look at our page. So we did forms. All right, we're running our server. Postman. If you do not have Postman installed, please do so now. It is very useful. We're going to be testing our API via Postman first. So let's test this out. So looks like I have an error down here. I don't know what that is. I'm going to kill my server and let's see if I can get it running. Nope, create wine not defined because that is some renaming I did. So that's my bad. Call this create wine, update wine, and delete wine. All right. Will Django be happy with that? There we go. Django is good and happy. So if I refresh here, all right. So we get to our familiar error page, but this is a good sign. It knows that we have 2 valid paths. It's telling us wines can be one of them. All right. Oh, anyone know why I got this error? I forgot a very, very important step.
Maybe creating the database?
Yeah, I think Omar said it. Sorry, I had some poor audio on my end here, but yeah, I forgot to migrate to my database, right? We created models. We never migrated these changes to the database. So like this error resulted because it's trying to write to the database, but it does not have this table. This table doesn't even exist. So that is easy to fix. So run Python manage.py make migrations. All right, there we go. So it's going to create a wine model for us. Then I'm going to run Python manage.py migrate. So now Django should have created those appropriate database tables with appropriate fields. So that was accidental, but a good reminder. Remember to always run migrations whenever you add models. All right, there we go. So we are taken to the wines list and we get this back. Nothing too interesting, but this is the data we are returning back. And it is JSON format. So again, wines is a key. We have entries here, but this is what we're sending out. Obviously, we don't have anything in here. So let's actually add some data so we can see it here. So I'm going to do it the easiest way I know how. I'm going to create a super user. So Python manage.py creates super user. So I'm going to use the admin panel, which is why I need a super user. All right, admin will be the name, no email address, password. Yeah, don't care about security. All right, there we go. So created a super user. One thing I need to do to use the admin panel is I need to go to admin.py in my app folder. I need to register the models that I want to actually use through my admin panel. So from wine app.models import wine. Then I need to do admin.site.register that wine model. So this should give me access to the wine model or modifying my model. So I'll run my server once more. I feel like I've been kind of going at it without pausing for questions. So any questions about anything we've done so far? So again, first we set up our models. Again, our models, pretty straightforward, just a few fields. Hopefully you guys kind of remember what models are doing, just kind of representing database tables in the back end. STR method that's used to actually display when we have wine objects. It's so more user-friendly display. Without this, you'll just see some not user-friendly text whenever we display this item. Next, we created our URLs. So again, just to have some routes so that when we go to different routes, we do different actions in our server. So we'll make requests to different routes, and then our server will give responses based on those requests. After our URLs, we created serializers. Again, this is the new item for today. It's just the idea of taking our internal data and creating, I guess, a shareable format. In this case, we're using JSON. JSON is kind of the standard of the web. Again, it's not the only format we use. We use XML. We could use, again, there's many other formats that we could use, but JSON is predominantly used. Was there a question out there?
Well, I had a quick question, Ankur. I was just following along in the notes, and I was curious why the notes used a property decorator and we didn't.
Yeah, so property, again, that just allows us, when we make something a property, that means we don't need to make a function call to do it. In that case, this is a function that takes no parameters. So if you looked at the curriculum code, they're calling wine serializers, initializing it with the wine's data in the constructor. and just calling all wines without parentheses. Notice there's no parentheses here, so we're not actually making a function call. The reason they could do this is because they use that property decorator. Again, that's something coming from Django, but that property decorator allows us just to call it like a property, as in it's like, dot length or dot whatever. I'm not sure why that's preferred here. I chose not to do it. I made a function call, so just compare and contrast. I chose to make it a function, so I need to actually pass in, actually need to have parentheses. In this case, I'm passing in data also. It's not going to my constructor, it's going directly into my method. Why are these different? I prefer it this way. Whoever coded up the curriculum page preferred it a different way. I don't think it really matters either way.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your question. All right, so I created my super user. Sorry, just to finish up what we're doing. So we created serializers, and we also created forms just to make our plugs easier. Again, we don't need forms. We can process the data ourselves, but forms kind of just do some of the hard work for us. And finally, we got our server running. So I'm created a super user. I registered my wine model, and I'm going to start adding some data. So let's run our server. Okay, server should be up. I'm going to localhost 8000 admin. So we get into the admin panel. Login. Okay, so if you did everything correctly for your super user and registering your models, you should have the ability to edit your wine objects. So here, notice we have 0 wines because our database has nothing initially in it. Let's add some wines. I am not a wine drinker, so could I request from the audience, let me maybe call some people. Who do we have here? Michael Robertson. Do you have a favorite wine or one wine you can suggest?
I drink a little bit of red, so I don't know, Pinot Noir.
Pinot Noir. Hopefully I spelled that correctly. Price, let's say it's nice. $17.99 bottle. Varietal. I don't know what varietal is. Anyone know? Is that the color?
I think it's based off of the grape, like the variety of grape that it comes from.
So is that Pinot? Is that the variety? Sure. Nice red wine from Michael Robertson. Okay, so if I hit save, that should hopefully save. All right, cool. Let's get a couple more in here. Jonathan, since I heard from you, do you have a wine to recommend?
I can't remember how to spell it. It's a Croix de Hermitage.
All right, I'm gonna guess the spelling. Croix de Hermitage. I don't know. That's probably wrong, but that's fine. Let's make that a nice $24.99 bottle. Varietal is magic. I don't know. And description is some wine I've never heard of that John C. mentioned. All right, we'll save that. Let's get one more. Let's actually do some research here. So say very expensive wine bottle sold. All right, so let's go with this one. Where did it go? State wine broker. So this is Lafite Rothschild 1900 for a cool $9,500. Anyone want to shell out that cash for the class? Price was $9,500. It's quite a lot for one beverage, but hey, some people love their wine. Do they have the varietal on here? I don't know what varietal is. I'm gonna guess this is a region, but region and varietal might be the same. Chateau and something I would never buy. All right, so we have 3 wines added. Let's go back to our wine list page. If I refresh, oh, that is not what I want. So it looks like I had an error here. So we can't append to that, but we can append to wines. All right, so again, we need to append to this list. We're not appending to output because that is a dictionary. We need to append to a list. So I forgot my key here. That happens, but we should be ready now. All right, there we go. So again, notice the structure that we're returning here. We are returning one dictionary. That dictionary has one entry called wines. Inside of that wines entry, we have a list. Inside that list, we have a dictionary. So again, definitely some nested data structures here. We have a list of dictionaries inside of a dictionary. But yeah, always make sure we know what we're sending. All right, cool. So our wine list page seems to work. So that's cool. But how do we test out the rest of these? So going back to my views, we tested out our wine list. That was simple enough. We could do a wine detail, so that's easy enough. So wine detail, if you remember, our route for that is simply the ID of the wine. Maybe I have a slash here. I need that slash. But so let's go to wine detail number 3. So notice that I don't actually see IDs here, right? I know since we just created these that this is ID 1, 2, and 3. Anyone have an idea of how you could actually see the ID here?
Including it in the serializer.
Yes, Serializer. That is where we want it. So Serializers, yep, right here we can provide the ID. So the ID is an automatic field that Django creates for us. So we don't need to pass it. Usually doesn't matter much to the user. They don't care about the IDs here, but we can do wine.id. That's a field that exists. Again, just to reiterate, this is not a field recreated. ID is a field that automatically gets created by Django. So any model you create will have a .id unless you want to like omit it somehow. But now we're passing that wine ID, so let's take a look. All right, there we go. ID 1, ID 2, ID 3. Let's take a look at ID 3. Yep.
On that, so I'm sorry if this is something that we've covered, but why is it 1 based and not 0 based?
Why is it 1 base, not 0 based? I don't have a great answer. Databases just start with 1 index. They're not 0 based. Programmers, we use 0 index. Databases just use 1. I'm not sure if there's a more SQL specific reason why 0 is not like a valid ID. It should be. But I think it's always 1 based for SQL databases, and for REST frameworks, we always use ID 1 also.
So when we go out and we're interacting with APIs, assume that it's 1 based.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, you're not going to see 0 indices kind of on the web. That's more just programming specific items. Yeah, it is kind of frustrating that you can kind of make that context switch, but just the way it is. Michael Robertson.
I noticed that everything kind of like auto refreshed and auto ran. You didn't actually have to execute anything except for modify the file and save.
I did refresh the page. I did refresh the page though.
Right, yeah, but just refreshing the page reruns the serializer and kind of requeries the database and prevents any multiplying or
So
duplicating.
What's happening here is when I refresh, we're making a brand new GET request to this URL. So we are sending a GET request. So that's, we're not going to duplicate data. We're not actually printing anything out. We're making a request. That request is going to our views. Our views are handled here. So each time we make that request, we're just going to do a new conversion and return a new response. So we're not actually like adding stuff to the screen. We're not showing any templates here. We're just sending a JSON response, and our browser is able to take the JSON and show it to us. So we're actually looking at JSON
so the SQL
data.
The database didn't actually change. It was just our information that we retrieved in JSON was what changed. Okay.
Yep. Yeah, our database models stay the same. We just decided to add the ID in here. So we added that to our serializer. We made a new request, and that serializer was run with the new data or the same data and give us back the ID field there. I'm not sure if I mentioned this, but I have something called Json Formatter installed. That is a plugin plugin for Chrome. I would recommend it. Again, you don't need it. That kind of just makes your JSON a little easier to read. Again, without it, I don't think you would have like the kind of highlighting of data types, and it just makes it easier to read. So the raw view will look like this. This is still the same object, just not friendly spacing. Parsed will look like this. So again, I don't know if you need this. I'm not sure what it looks like without it. Someone can verify or tell me. So without JSON Formatter, what does your output look like?
It looks like the raw.
Okay, yeah. So I guess I'll pause for like 30 seconds here. If you guys want to download or install JSON Formatter, it should be pretty easy to find and install, but it just makes it easier to read JSON data like such.
And I'm sorry, is that an extension or an actual download?
Extension, sorry. Yeah, you don't, I guess I don't know quite difference, but yeah, you need to just install it for your Chrome browser. That should be good to go. Okay, it looks like I've heard my $sign here, so I'm gonna make that change while you guys maybe get JSON Formatter. So let's go to this one. I want a $signs here. Consistent. Okay, so with that change, there's that $sign there. There we go. Okay, so our get requests are working. Let's actually go to a detail page. So if I go to wine/3, notice we get the detail for one specific wine. So that is based on the URL we're going to, we're making a get request to a different URL. So our server gives us back a different response. In this case, the detail for one wine. Now the question goes, well, how do we actually go about creating wines, right? Let's look at the route for creating wines. The route is /create. So if I go to /create, let's see what happens. Okay, so notice we got an error. There's a couple reasons why we got this error. One is saying value error. The wine app views that create wine did not return an HTTP response object, it returned none instead. Why did that happen? Well, if we take a look at our views, notice here, let me make it smaller. We went to create wine, so we got into this piece of logic. But we have one if statement, and only if this is a post do we actually return something valid. Otherwise, we return none. None's the default return type from a function. We could be a little more user-friendly, like we return an HTTP response that says bad request. All right, this should take care of it, I think. Let me verify that. So we import it. So HTTP response comes from there. I'm not sure why that's needed. Give that a try. All right, so if they don't make a post request, we're just going to send back a bad request. Their status here. Status. Let me look into Django a little bit. So Django for errors. Trying to see if there's a way to return custom 404 error. Maybe it's not as simple as I think. Yep. So not found, how do they do that? All right, I'm not gonna, so it looks like we need to create a template. I don't want to do that. So we just return an HTTP response. Let's call it 404 to pretend we are doing something. All right, so if I refresh now, notice we get bad requests. So it's still more user-friendly, but the core question remains, how do we actually submit a post request to this route? Well, the thing is, we could create an HTML page that has a form, and that method for that form could be a post or whatever. That could work, but we don't want to create any views on our API side. Our API is just serving up data. There's no views associated with them. That's where Postman comes into play. So as we mentioned, Postman, hopefully you guys have it downloaded. If not, take the next, 45 seconds to download it. Postman is really useful for testing endpoints. So I'm launching my Postman. Hopefully it'll come up in the next 10 seconds. There it is. All right, so here's my Postman. Let's toss that over here. All right, it's loading up. I do have some commands in here already. So I have wine list. So we make get requests. So again, you select your request type. Notice there's at least a dozen types of requests you can make, but we're just be focusing on get, post, put, and delete. I also mentioned patch. We could maybe take a look at patch. Actually, we can't because we haven't coded that up. But all right, so get request. If I send this here, notice we get the same response here, right? This is the JSON data that we're sending from any get request we make to /wines. Likewise, if I go to /3, wine detail, or wine 3 was that really expensive wine. If I send this, yep, we still get that response. So again, testing get requests, pretty simple. We already did that through our browser. Right, same thing going on there. But Postman allows us to send different request types. So if I actually want to send a post, so here I have a post, so make sure you change your method to be post. Let's actually just create a new one because I have these created already. Let's create a new item. We're going to do an HTTP request. And click on that. All right, so this is a brand new item. I want to go to HTTP //localhost 8000 /wine create. All right, so that's where I want to send my request. I want this request to be a post. So I want to, again, that's what we specified for our backend logic, where a post actually does something. Every other request type will give us a bad request. All right, so we're going to post here. But we need to send it some data. So again, Postman allows us to do this. So in our Postman, I'm creating a new item. Let's save this as wine API. Sure, let's just save it as that. All right, so we want to send data here. The way to send data is you want to go to the body tab. Again, these tabs are kind of hard to see, but underneath your address input, there should be a body tab. You click that. In here, you could send some data. I usually click raw. So click the raw radio button. And then here, there should be again, the UI is not the greatest here, but there should be a drop down that populates or shows up when you click raw. So I click raw. Here, I want to change this to JSON because that's the data type we're sending. All right, so again, just to reiterate, we went to the body tab, clicked raw, and now I'm going to switch to JSON. So now anything we put into the body is going to be interpreted as JSON. All right, it looks like there's no content type in our headers. I think Tom talked about content type. I was wondering if like JSON would be automatically inserted here, but I don't know. I guess it's not. All right, anyway, in my body section, I'm going to write some JSON. So let's format this, curly brace, and then we're going to say wine name. Again, what we're simulating is as if a user filled out a form. We grab the data, and then we are sending that data from the client back to the server. So in this case, we're going to create a JSON object. Wine name will be, someone else got a wine for me? Any wine drinkers out there?
Pinot Grigio.
What was that? Pinot
Grigio.
How do you
It's a
spell
white wine.
that? You know?
No, I don't know.
All right. Graze. Let's make it sound fancy with adding X's in there. I know that's not how you spell it, but whatever. All right.
Grigio.
What was it? GIO?
Grigio.
Like that?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
And then you got to say it with your hand. Grigio.
Gotcha. Thanks. All right. So we have wine name. What else do we have? We have price. How much does a nice bottle of Pinot Grigio cost? Anyone know?
$8.
$8. All right. We'll go $7.99. Have that same pricing. $7.99, comma. What else we have? We have varietal. I don't know. Pinot again. And finally, we have description. Description. Important thing, and these field names must match what you have on the backend. So the naming here does matter. You can't just send anything you want. Again, these names are mapping specifically to the form. So our form is handling the processing. So the form can take in some data and pick out the fields. But the fields must be named as such. Otherwise, your form is not going to be able to pick out the data like it wants to. So we're relying on forms, so we need to make sure the naming is consistent. Also, our I guess yeah, that's the only thing that matters there. Okay, description. Make sure we don't have any typos. The script. Description. More wine. Say wine. All right. So assuming that all of our field names are correct, assuming our URL is correct, and that everything's put up correctly, if we send this, this should be sent as a post request. If everything worked correctly, we should get into our views, into our create wine handler. It should identify that the request is a post. Therefore, take the request. So we use JSON.load. So that's something new that we should point out from the code we copied. JSON.load will take in that request and get basically the data that's in the body section of that request. Once we have that data, we use our wine form to extract that data and create an object within Python. And then we can use that to validate it and save it to the database. It looks like once we get a response or a request, we actually pass back a response with the same data. So when they create a wine, we pass back the wine. But keep in mind that wine data is going to have an ID on it. So that's basically the new information we're sending back. The user doesn't specify the ID. It is your database that creates the ID and sends it back. So let's take a look at this and we'll take a break so we can go on and add it for a good hour. So let's see if this works. If not, we'll need to figure out what's going wrong. So if I hit send. All right, there we go. Notice I got my response. So my response has everything that I sent to it, but it gave me back an ID because that ID is coming from the database. So it was inserted into the database. We got a record for it. So we're able to extract an ID or pass back an ID to the user. Again, the user doesn't care about IDs, but now we should be able to go back to my browser and go to /4. That should exist now. There we go. Pinot Grigio should be my wine list. There it is. We have our 4th entry. So again, this was our client submitted a post request, and that's how our data got added. We didn't use our admin panel for this. Okay, I think we are definitely due for a break. So let me pause recording here.
Hey, Jonathan, I don't know if this is the same error you were getting, but Vine just says could not send request, and then cloud agent error cannot send requests to localhost, select a different agent. Was that what was happening with you?
No, my page wasn't found because I was using create instead of new. I was following Anchor opposed to following the copy and paste that I did. And then prior to that, my confusion was I was just super lost.
Yeah,
Right.
let's take some time to troubleshoot. So Dan, you said you're getting error. Do you want to share your screen? Yeah, I want to make sure everyone who wants to code along can. So sorry if I'm going too fast. Hopefully Postman's not giving us too many issues. All right, so Dan Miller sharing his screen here. I guess I could. All right, so we were able to add a new line via Postman by sending a post request to the specified URL. In this case, the URL we sent it to was wine/create. We already looked at wine detail. Let's try to update an existing wine. So if we go to a particular ID/update, that should allow us to update a particular wine. So let's update the one we just added here. So if I go back to my Postman, I already kind of have this wired up. But so in this case, we want to do a put request because that is a change we made from the curriculum page where instead of just always doing post requests, we specified a put request is how you actually edit a wine. So let's go back to our views. Let's add this for the rest of these. All right, so that should be good. All right, so if we try to do a post request here, let's see what happens. Set post request. Page not found because that's not edit, that's update for me. Save that. All right, there we go. So we have 404 bad requests. That is what we're sending back from the server because we are trying to do a method that is not supported by our server. But if you do a put request, we should be able to do it. Looks like I had some data in here before, but my wine name was Capri Sun, price $3.99 clear. But in this case, we want to update a particular wine. So if we're updating wine number 4, that's where we need to send the update to. This was Pinot Grigio. The price was $7.99. Right, that was Pinot. And the description was, let's change our description. So let's say the best wine ever. All right, so currently our description is wine record we are adding to the database. We should be able to update this, but keep in mind, we do need to pass the rest of these fields. So again, this is an update or a put request. We can't simply just pass it the description, even though that's the only thing we want to change. So if I send this, let's see if this works. So again, a put request, because we changed it to put. Again, I want everyone to be aware of their own code. So if you did not change your methods here, then you'll be still sending a post request if this still posts. But I have mine as put, so let's give this a try. All right, looks like I had an error.
You have an
extra quotation mark. That will definitely screw us up. Let's try that again. All right, we still got a bad request for a put. That's interesting. let's see what's going on here. So I'm going to, what do we do here? /updates. Let's put in a console.log request that method. Check what that is.
Hey, Ankur, do you need to pass in the ID here?
No.
Okay.
Oh, yes. Wait, do I? No, because the ID is being extracted from here, I think. Let's figure this out. So
Console log won't work though in Django.
yeah, you're right. All those context switches. All right, let's try this again. Blah, blah. All right, bad request. Why is that a bad request? We did get a put here. So it's going through this. I bet is valid is failing. So Seth might be right. Maybe we need to pass the ID, but what's happening is we're getting into this if statement. We're probably failing this right here. Therefore, we don't return right here. Instead, we return this. So let's try to figure this out. So why form is valid.
The ID doesn't matter. I just tested it.
Gotcha.
So it works.
Okay, let's make sure we don't have any typos here. So varietal price. That all looks correct to me. Name, oh, wine name, that's the issue. So again, I changed up some field names. So probably the previous time I did this project, I called it name instead of wine name. Again, that naming matters because if you remember, our form is specifically looking for that field name. All right, so I had a typo. Let's try this again. All right, there we go. So we got our updated item, which is description, the best wine ever. If I go back to my webpage here, we should see that update. There we go. Looks like I lost my $sign there. So let's fix that. $sign. Send that. All right. $sign should be back now. All right, cool. So again, updating works. Again, we just need to send some data, in this case with a put request, and make whatever updates we need to. But the important thing is we need to supply every field. If you do not, that will give us an error. So let's say we only wanted to update the description. Let's say the worst line ever. All right, if I try to send this, we're getting an error. We're getting bad requests. That's not showing us the full details here. Let's see if I remember how to do this. So is valid. How to get errors? Anyone remember how to get errors out of the form? Django form get errors. Do I need to try accept? Maybe let's try to try accept. We've been lacking on that. Let's do try that. Accept. Validation error.
No, exception as E, if you want to print it.
I didn't quite catch that, except.
So you can do exception. No. Accept exception as E. Next line, print the E. Yeah. And yeah, colon print.
Gotcha. There's some feedback on your end, Kevin. I'm not sure what might be generating that, but yeah, we did get the message there. So exception is E and then print out E. So let's see if that works, or we need to do something else. So if I try to run this again, bad request, sure. What got thrown out here? Anything? I don't think I got anything here.
Yeah, there's no exception.
All right. Why? Maybe my form is failing. I think that should be it. Try that. Let's make sure our JSON loads also. So let's put everything into a try. Doesn't hurt to add extra stuff in a try. All right. Let's see if this works, or as in doesn't work. Try that again. Send that. Bad request. Sure. All right. We're still not getting anything here. I'm a little confused.
I know this is the naming off on update versus.
No. So specifically, I'm not sending all the data. So I'm expecting an error. I'm just trying to see why I can't actually catch that error on my Django side. I see the put here, so it's printing out this. Let's just add more console logs or prints, I guess.
So what's the problem? Because there's no exception. It's just if put, if it's not a put, then it's going to return the HTTP response, right?
Yeah, so is valid is failing. So I guess that doesn't throw an exception is my guess here, but I want to know how I could actually see what errors got thrown here. So that's what I was trying to search for before. Get a list of errors from Django form. Form errors dot items. That might be something I want. Who knows? Let's give it a try. Else print. I'll get off this in a minute. It's not critical that we figure out these errors, but let's see if form dot errors dot items has anything good in it. All right, bad request. All right, so we got an error dictionary. That seems promising. So I guess all this try except stuff was not necessary, but for error in let's see all the errors that we get. So that's kind of nice to know. So again, form.errors contains something relevant, I think. So let's see if we try to send this. All right, let's go back to our Django. That didn't give us anything. Why is life so difficult here? This is a dictionary. Oh, so we got to use it as a dictionary. That would make sense. Error key. R. All right. I'm gonna get off this soon, I promise, but let's try this one more time. Send. Still nothing. All right. I guess I'll give up here.
Wait, isn't items a function or dictionary?
Is that how it's working? Error. Yeah, I didn't realize that was the function. Thank you, Kevin. All right. Finally, thank you. All right. So notice we're getting errors. This field is required because, I mean, we knew it was required. I just want to show that's what's going wrong. So in this case, you need to pass everything, even if you're updating one thing. It was my whole point there that took forever to explain. All right. With that, our update works. Let's test out our delete. So our delete is a delete method. I'm going to go to delete. Let's delete item number 4. We don't need to send anything in the body because if you remember our handler here for delete, we don't use anything from the message. We just get a delete request and we just go ahead and delete the wine ID that comes from the URL. All right, so we should be able to delete something. We should get a JSON response back, successfully deleted wine if that was successful. So let's give that a try. Again, delete request, because that's what we specified, /4/delete, hit enter. All right, cool. We got a status successfully deleted wine. That's the status we're sending. What if I try to delete this again, right? Wine 4 no longer exists. What if I hit delete again? Notice we get an error this time saying does not exist because we already deleted that one time. All right, cool. So it looks like our CRUD capabilities work. We can create wine, we can read wine out of the database, we can update wine and also delete wine records from our database. That's cool. All right, so we're doing this all through the web. Again, we're not doing this with the admin panel. This is something that we could do through HTTP requests. What questions do you guys have about what we've implemented here today? No questions? All righty
So
then.
this is how we're going to create users though, and like store our own data for our personal applications.
Yes, yep, yeah, so as Seth mentioned, yeah, when you create a website, usually you're gonna wanna have users, so you should have a sign up page where you will have them sign up, send a request to your server. That server should be able to create a user record from all that data. And yeah, that's how it'll be going. Question, I need a volunteer. So who was able to follow along and implement their CRUD capabilities? Again, I'm not gonna ask you guys to do anything too complicated. We're just gonna walk you through some steps here. Seth, I saw you raise your hand. I guess I can't see the whole class. Sure, Seth, we'll take you as a volunteer. Seth, would you be willing to share your screen and show us your API that you have?
Sure. I'll also step back if anybody else wants to do it because I had the pleasure of doing it last time.
Thank you. Yep. If anyone else who has got their CRUD capabilities working, we're going to do something to put this actually on the web. So I could do this on my screen, but I've already done it once. I want to just have someone else run through it. Any volunteers? All right. Seth, is this your screen? Yes, it is. All right. So hopefully you guys were able to, or eventually will, create this API that's running off your local machine. So you, as you know, as the owner of your machine, have access to make calls to your local host. I cannot make requests to Seth's machine right now because it's running off his local machine. He can do stuff on his machine, but I cannot, invade his computer because that'd be a huge security concern. I don't have access to his API that is running right now on his machine. But when we develop applications, we don't want to be running servers off our local machine. We need somewhere on the web to serve up this data, much like, again, Google Maps has an endpoint that's active, open weather. Again, we can make requests over the web to any of these points. So we're going to go through the process of setting up our Heroku project and actually deploying this to the web so that anyone on the web can have access to your data. Again, you're not running off your local machine. I want to make that clear. Heroku is going to be hosting a server for you and provide it to the web. So there's a few steps I'm going to run through, and I'm going to ask Seth to run through these steps. And again, if you are doing this at home, also follow along and try to get this running also. All right, Seth, so you ready for this? All right, thumbs up. So first thing, Seth, I'm going to ask you, can we go from your web browser, can you go to Heroku.com? So it's HEROKU.com. All right, so some of you guys may have been familiar with Heroku before, but most of you, I assume, have not created a Heroku account. So Seth, could we watch you sign up for a free account? There are different accounts. There are paid tiers. With a free account on Heroku, you can have up to 5 projects deployed for free. Once you exceed that 5, they'll ask you to upgrade your account. But with the free account, you should be able to sign up. Yeah, the language doesn't really matter. They're just trying to get data from you. Seth has confirmed he is not a robot, so we will accept that validation. All right, so Seth's going to validate that. Again, if you need to do any of this off screen, you're welcome to. Yep. We don't want to get Seth's personal information. So yeah,
what's
hopefully
the difference between Heroku and other servers like GoDaddy?
Yeah, so well, I guess I can't speak about GoDaddy specifically, but Heroku makes it very easy to deploy Django projects. Again, I've not used GoDaddy enough to know, but I don't think GoDaddy has support for Django specifically. It might, but there's also other options like AWS would be an alternative to Heroku. AWS is probably more capable. However, it's more complicated to get this deployed. So Heroku is pretty simple to set up. We're going to do this in the next 10 minutes, get a project up on the web pretty quickly. So Seth is signing up for an account. Hopefully you guys are able to sign up. All right, so Seth has signed up for a Heroku account and logged in. Is that correct, Seth?
That is correct.
All right, cool. So once we have our Heroku accounts created, we're going to need to do a few other steps to get this deployed. So Seth, you're on a Mac, correct?
Yeah, I'm on a Mac.
Could you bring up a terminal window or a console window somewhere? All right, cool. You got that handy. Here we need to install something onto our machine. So Seth, could you type brew space tap space Heroku /brew? I'll make sure this is correct. All right, give that a run. Hopefully that's correct. All right, so that's going to take maybe a hot second.
Does it matter what folder he's in?
It does not matter what folder you're in. I think brew just runs anywhere. All right, we know that Seth's password is 10 characters long, so if anyone wants to crack it, good luck.
This is GitHub?
Yeah, you need your GitHub password, sorry.
Oh man.
Okay.
Oh, I just had to enter it in 15 times. So
okay, gotcha. All right,
weird.
so once that's been done, can you run brew install Heroku? So we're going to install a Heroku software onto our machines here.
So Ankur, since we're installing on a separate step, what actually happened the first time? Were we just kind of connected to it?
I think it just ran some updates for brew. I'll be honest, I'm not a Mac user, so I don't know homebrew too well. I just know that these are steps you want to run. You might get away without running the first step, but I don't know, these are steps I've listed. So sorry, I can't answer that with a valid response, but fair question.
Anytime you use brew install, it will update all the installations that need to be updated and then install the thing you want it to. That's just how brew, like, I guess it's a package manager. That's just how it works.
So yeah, the tap, again, I'm not sure what tap is doing, but maybe it's optional. Sorry, there might be more Mac peer mode. So is the tap part optional? You're saying if we just did brew install Heroku, it update it appropriately?
Yeah, that actually should have worked.
Okay, cool. So good to know. Always good to get some Mac tips there. All right, Seth, as we're continuing on here, could you run npm dash, npm space, get rid of that dash, npm install dash G. The dash G means this is gonna be a global space dash G. That's gonna be a global installation. And then type in Heroku. So now we're actually downloading some Heroku libraries. So we actually go to, let me see what that is. I believe this is the command line interface for Heroku. Yeah, so what we're downloading now is the command line interface to interact with Heroku. So again, Heroku we installed via brew, but now we're installing the command line interface so we can actually use our terminal to interact with it. All right, so we did brew install Heroku, we did npm install Heroku at the global level. That's what the dash G was for. I don't know if the dash G is required, but simple enough. Do we need to run the audit? Let's try without the audit. If that still causes issues, we might need to fix some things. All right, now we're going to log in with Heroku. So this is what Seth created on account. We need to log in via our command line. So we just downloaded a command line interface. We're going to log in so we don't have to keep logging in the future. So Seth, can you run Heroku space login dash I, or sorry, space dash I. So let's hit no here. Yeah, so space I, sorry, yeah, dash I. All right, so it's gonna ask you to log in now. So again, the credentials you used to log in, again, if you need to go off screen, totally fine. But this is your password for Heroku. All right, so now we are actually logged into the Heroku site, or I guess the Heroku interface through our command line. All right, so all of these steps you just need to do one time. You should know how to do this every time you deploy the Heroku. Once you're logged in, your computer should remember it. If you maybe reboot, you might need to log in again, but probably not. Okay, so this is a one-time deal. You don't have to do this all the time. Any questions for anyone that might be following along? Anyone got stuck anywhere? Again, if you're a Windows user, might have to run some different commands. Apologies for our non-Mac users. All right, so this was our setup step. And now we need to actually deploy our current project to Heroku. So Seth, could you go to your VS Code where your Django API project was running? All right, there we are. Can we, let's take up the whole screen there, and then thank you. We can kill our server for now, so let's get back to our terminal in VS Code. All right, thank you, Seth. All right, so we're gonna run some commands here. So again, this is stuff that you might want to take down because I literally have notes in front of me. These are some steps you just need to do for every time you want to deploy to Heroku. I'm gonna pause here in case people need to grab a pencil or whatever they're typing. First thing we're gonna do is create something called a proc file. All right, so Seth, could you go to your manage.py level in your file explorer? I guess we're already there, aren't we? Yeah, all right. So again, this needs to be on the same level as manage.py. So Seth is there. Yep, he did an ls for us, or ll. What does ll do? Is that more details?
Yeah, it's just the alias for L -L-A, I think, for
Okay.
everything.
Cool. Yep. Good to learn command line tricks also. So again, you need to be on the same level as your manage.py. Now we want to create a new file, and it has to be named proc file with a capital P. So capital P, ROC, and then file, all as one word. All right. So again, this has no file extension, is a proc file, capital P, no file extension. So if you hit enter here, that should add something called proc file. And notice that VS Code knows it's a Heroku file. Notice the icon is the Heroku logo. All right, so we create our proc file. Again, just to reiterate, this must be the same level as your manage.py. So again, if you have nested folders for your Django project, make sure you go into the right level. All right, so we have a proc file. Next, we want to add in a line of code. And this is something, again, I encourage you guys to take notes because this is nothing I memorize. It's something I have notes. Seth, could you type the word web here? Space, G unicorn as one word. All right, so this is an application we're going to be installing shortly, space. And then now, whatever the name of your Django project is. So in this case, it looks like wine_project is the name of your Django project. And then docs, WSGI. So if you kind of want to know the details here, if you actually open up your wine project folder, notice that there's a WSGI file in there. That is what's being used here. Again, I don't know the details. I'm not going to pretend I know all the details, but this is what's being used that we just typed in. So I think WSGI stands for Web Server Gateway Interface. Again, you don't need to know the details. Just know that in your proc file, you need to write web:*G unicorn space the name of your project .WSGI. So I'm going to pause here for anyone that is coding along or taking notes. Yep, always good to thank you, Seth. Okay, that is step 2. So step 1 was the initialization stuff. Step 2 is create a proc file and add this in. All right, step 3 is we need to actually install G unicorn. So again, this is in our virtual environment, which Seth is already in. We're going to install something called G unicorn or Gunicorn, however you want to pronounce it. It's a green unicorn app that's just used for web servers. Again, I don't know the details. It's just something that we're going to use. All right, so if we do pip install and then G unicorn or Gunicorn or whatever you want to call it. There you go. All right, so that should install it. That was pretty quick. All right, so that was step 3, install green unicorn. Step 4 is install Django Heroku. This is something our Django project needs. So install Django-Heroku, all one word. So this is something our Django project needs to actually work with Heroku. So hit enter. All right, so we installed 2 things, G unicorn and Django-Heroku. I'm going to take a pause here just to let people catch up.
So Ankur, G unicorn, that's getting installed to our virtual environment.
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
But each time you do this, you're going to want to install G unicorn to your virtual environment. I guess you could do it globally, but better to kind of do it in your virtual environment because again, versions can change. That can throw off old projects if like a new version comes around. Okay, so step number 5, we need to update our project settings. So Seth, could you take us to your settings.py file for your Django project? Okay, at the very top, I guess it doesn't have to be a top, but where you have your imports on line 13. Again, you could probably put this anywhere in your file, but usually put imports at the top. Can you import Django_Heroku? So this is, again, something just to be aware of. When we installed it, it's Django-Heroku. For the import, it's Django_Heroku. Yep. I guess you could do it this way. Import, what do you want to import? Actually, can you just do import Django-Heroku instead of from? All right, so we're just importing the entire Django-Heroku library or module. There we go. All right, and at the very bottom of this file, so go scroll all the way to the bottom. Again, I'm not sure if that needs to be at the very bottom, but this is what I have in my notes. Add Django_Heroku. That's the module that we imported. Sorry, no add. Sorry, just insert Django Heroku. Yep, so that's the module that we imported. If you do dot settings, I guess we could have imported settings. Yep, so Django Heroku dot settings, in parentheses, put locals. And parentheses around that. So that's a function that we're calling somehow. Yep, so again, these are just steps. I can't explain them all to you. These are just what we need to do. So we imported Django Heroku in our settings.py. Now we are calling dot settings with locals as a parameter that we're passing to it. What is this doing? I don't know. All right, so that's the bottom of our file. All right, we're almost there. We got a couple more steps here.
In the installed apps, was it an underscore or a dash?
When you installed it, it was dash, but
In
inside,
the installed apps. Oh, never
I
mind.
don't think we need to add it there.
I must have missed.
I might be mistaken, but yeah, I don't
Are
think
you
we need
talking
to.
about the import? I think it's an underscore.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, a couple more steps here. So we're done with Django specific items. So Seth, can you go back to your terminal? Oh, sorry, your VS Code terminal was good enough, but either one, or yeah, let's go here. All right, we want to create a list of dependencies. Do you or does anyone remember how to create a list of dependencies from pip? All right.
Just put freeze.
Pip freeze.
Yep, a couple people mentioned it. So we want to do pip freeze and then the, I guess, greater than sign or less than, I always forget. So pointing outwards, that angle bracket. There we go. Yep. And we want to write this out to requirements.py or requirements.txt file. All right. So this is the same thing as like package.json, just less elegant, but we are telling specifically what libraries we're using here. So again, notice that there's G Unicorn in there, there's PsychoPG, Django. So again, we want to lock this in. The reason we need to do this is because again, Heroku is going to be creating an environment for you based on these requirements. All right. So the last step we need to do is initialize. Let's see. All right. So this is a brand new project, right? We created this from scratch. We need to create a Git project for this. So Seth, do you remember the steps for creating a brand new Git project?
From the terminal?
Yep.
Oh, man.
That's fine.
That's like
If you don't,
week
yeah,
one
so
stuff.
the first thing I want to do, again, this is not something we checked out. This is something we just created on our machine. To initialize with Git, we run git init. Oh, sorry, git init with a space. So git space init. So init is a command for Git. It's going to create a new Git project for us. So hit enter. All right, so now we are actually versioned by Git. Notice that Seth's like syntax highlighting and VS Code changed to all green. We probably want to add a Git Ignore because we don't want to submit our virtual environment. So let's create a Git Ignore. Always good to create that. All right, so we want to ignore our virtual environment. We're not going to be pushing that up. All right, awesome. So that should be grayed out, hopefully, once you save it. We could add some other things, I think PyCache, but it doesn't really matter. I think virtual environment's the largest thing here. All right, so we added our Git Ignore. What else do we want to do here? Okay, so now we have a Git project. We could and probably should commit this to our local GitHub, so we have a backup, but we don't have to do that. We don't have to do that for Heroku. So for Heroku, we want to, let's see, add a remote. So can you type in the Heroku commands in your command line? All right, do space, do git colon remote -a. Sorry, space -a. All right, and then now you're gonna be creating, what you're doing right now is creating a project on the Heroku site. So you're gonna give it a name. So do space here. You can name it whatever you want. The requirements are probably no spaces and such. So Seth is gonna give his project name. Again, this will be on your Heroku site. So we're gonna call it wine project, all right?
Can't use underscores.
What was that, Kirma?
You can't use underscores.
You can't, all right.
You can use dashes though, so I would recommend doing that.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I use dashes. I guess underscores are not approved. All right, one proj. Let's give that a run. Hopefully this works. I appreciate Seth for putting all these steps in the chat. I'll probably put up a summary of my notes in our pop-up Platoon chat. Well, let's see if we can get this running. We're almost to the finish line, promise. Again, there are a number of steps. I've written them down because, again, I don't memorize any of this.
Looks like a hit in error.
That's not good. What does it say? Could not find that app. Okay, so maybe I lied to you. Let's go to your Heroku website on your browser. Yeah, I think we need to maybe create the project ourselves. So apologies here. Let's create a new project. So create new app is on your, yep, there you go. And give this app a name. So this is the name we need to match here. So you can give this whatever name you want. We've not created this app yet. So wine proj, not available. So I think you need to make it unique. I think, yeah, it's unique to everyone's app. So maybe prepend some unique thing, Seth wine app, proj. All right, cool, that's available. All right, so yeah, again, this has to be totally unique for everyone that's on Heroku. So you just need unique names. They do have suggestions, like they'll automatically generate random name project for you. I think that's a feature. But okay, so Seth Wynett. So looking at, scroll down a bit, Seth, if you can on this page. So we already did the login. So it says do Heroku login. We already did that with Seth. We did git init. So that was the step we just did. Now we want to run like git remote. Yep. So if you just copy that instead of typing it. Yep. So copy that and run that on your side. All right, so what this actually did is now take our Git project is it's pointing over the Heroku. Initially, when we did git init, we created a Git project that was not referencing any other GitHub or sorry, Git project on the web. Now we're saying, all right, we're going to point to Heroku. So now when we commit something, it's going to go to Heroku if we want. So let's do a git add. Yep, period, just like normal. So git add. These steps should be familiar. Do a git commit. Awesome. Yep. So again, these steps should be familiar to you. And then finally, we want to do a git push. Instead of origin, we want to do Heroku. So Heroku is the name of the destination we gave it. So let's run that. All right, give that a run. It looks like we need to copy that code. Okay, so this is actually pushing your file changes to a GitHub on Heroku. This is not on our GitHub. This is some Git repository on Heroku side. So it's going to do a few things. It's going to take maybe a few seconds. Seth, if you actually can go back to your web browser. Scroll up a bit. Go to overview, I think. Yeah, so notice you see latest activity. It's actually doing something right now. It's building his projects. You see it's doing that. It should, yeah, so now it just got built and it's actually deployed now. So this is on the web now. Actually, it says build in progress, but it looks like it's deployed. So, all right, there's one more thing that it's key. It's easy to forget. So this is everything we've done so far. Seth has created a Heroku account. We've logged into Heroku via the command line interface on Seth's end, so we had to install a few things for that. We set up our Django project with a few essentials to work with Heroku. Again, we had to install Django-Heroku. We also need to use Green Unicorn as our web server. We created a Git project and we associated that with Heroku. So now we have a repository on Heroku side. It's not running off of Seth's machine. I'll make that clear. Finally, there's one additional thing going on here. Again, this is running on Heroku's end. When we run our project on Heroku's end, Heroku is going to create a database on its side. Again, it's not going to use Seth's data or Seth's database. So we actually need to tell the Heroku database about all of the changes that exist in our Django projects. We actually need to run a migration. So Seth, can you go back to your VS Code terminal? And this is going to be the last step we need to do here. So in his terminal, Seth, can you write the Heroku keyword or the Heroku command and then space run? And now we do what we do before. So do Python manage py migrate. So the first two things are telling us we're doing this on Heroku's end, not on our machine. Yep, give that a run. So again, this is actually making changes to the Heroku's database that got created, not on Seth's local database. If we wanted to update Seth's local database, we'll just do Python managed by migrate. So look, hopefully that stuff looks familiar. But this got added to the Heroku database. Now we should be good to go. So let's go back to your web browser, Seth, if you could. There's a button called Open App at the very top. Yep, right there. Click that. All right. This looks familiar. Seth, can you go to /wines? All right, we have no wine data. Guys, Seth's project is on the web now. For all of you that have Postman, try submitting some create requests to this endpoint. I'm going to try doing it too. There might be one more step, but we all have access to Seth's project. Seth, could you post your URL? Oh, he did. So it's in the Zoom chat.
Thank you.
You all should be able to add wines to Seth's project. I'm going to give it a try. There might be one step that I'm missing here, but let's see. Post. So we're going to post to Seth's endpoint here. Raw. Okay. Are you guys getting CSRF errors by any chance? I got one.
Yeah, I got the same.
Okay.
It worked for me. I was able to.
Yeah, mine went through too.
Oh, weird. All right, so we got some data. So looks like Michael Robertson added some Robertson Cabernet. We got Seth's Grigio and also toilet water. I'm not sure who submitted that, but this is, again, we have access to this project on the web now. So it's actually deployed. Anyone on the web can hit up Seth's endpoint, but this is not on his machine. So his machine's not, at jeopardy, or people are not going to hack his machine by having this web point. Again, Heroku is actually running his project and providing it on the web. All right. Again, I know there's a few steps. Hopefully you guys took some notes. I'll try to put up my notes in terms of everything we needed to do here. But through these steps, we're using Heroku as our web server, and now we have access to it. Seth, could you refresh your page? I assume some people more are adding some more items. Maybe not.
A 403 error for some reason.
Yeah, I got a 403 error also, CSRF validation. For those people that submitted it, we're using the desktop client.
Yeah, I was using desktop client. I just dropped in there the URL.
Oh, I didn't. Sorry. I know what my error was. I wasn't going to /create. I was just going to /wines. So make sure you're going to the create endpoint. I got a bad request because I need to. I got a bad request.
And let me ask you, Ankur, I don't know if this is the right time to ask. I thought I followed along with the steps, but when I went to open app, it says application error. Is that something that we can troubleshoot now, or is this an offline issue?
We'll try it offline. I'm trying to figure out why I can't submit to.
I'm trying to go to create, and I'm getting a 404 bad request.
I dropped the URL in the chat if you want to copy and paste it. I don't know. Maybe there's a typo.
The weird thing is, though, Seth, when I click your link, I also get a 404 bad request in my browser.
You would, because if you click on it as like a GET request, you're not going to have anything.
You could try going to Seth-wine-API herokuapp.com/wines, which is a GET request. I'm going to try that too. Let's see. Yeah, so I could get to his wines page. Looks like a lot got added, but yeah, I'm having trouble in creating also. But it looks like some people figured it out. I'm not sure what's missing on my end. I get bad requests for a post.
Gotta take the ID out. I just completely removed the ID. Probably go through then.
Oh, I know. Again, my issue was bad naming, so I need to send wine name, not name. Let me try to create mine. All right, I was able to send mine, so you should see Capri Sun added to your list here. There we go. That's my submission there. Yeah, so it is possible. I would just double check the URL is correct. Make sure you're sending a post request. make sure that the data you're sending matches what Seth's server is expecting. So you need wine_name, price, varietal, description. I had a typo. I was using name instead of wine name was my issue there. But we can definitely try to take this offline if people are still trying to submit to Seth's server. Hopefully you don't overload his server with too much data.
Wait, can Seth, would you mind giving the thing back to Ankur? And because I just haven't messed around with Postman much, would you mind just adding a new post?
You want me to do?
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind.
So you want me to submit something to Seth's server? Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, cool. So let's create a new request. So add the plus sign. So we want to do a post request. All right, so we're posting because we're creating something. I'm going to copy what Seth sent us over the Zoom chat so I don't mistype it. But again, it's just the destination to his, can't even find the Zoom chat, there it is. All right, so it is running at HTTPS Seth-wine-app. So again, if I do a GET request in my browser, which I just did, it takes me to the wine list page. So this is all the wines that other people have added. If I take that path, enter that in here, I want to go to /create because that is the endpoint for actually creating new routes. So again, sethwineapp.herokuapp.com/wines. That's his routing for his project. /create because that's where we send a create request to. So again, this can be a post method. In our body section, we need to go to raw. Again, your Postman might look a little different based on what I saw on I think John's screen, but you want to go to JSON and then send some JSON data. So here, wine name is one of the fields, required fields. We'll call this high C. What else? We had the price. A box of 6-pack of high C probably goes for $3.99 these days. Maybe inflation has increased that. Make sure that everything is surrounded by quotes. That's an easy mistake to make. So, and these are char fields. So we want strings here. Varietal. Did I spell that wrong? Can't even spell this word. Varietal. All right. So make sure that's spelled correctly. So it's VARIETAL. This supposed to be fruits. It's actually sugar. It's not really fruit. Sugar. And then description. More sugar than fruit. Okay, so again, these are the required fields. Make sure everything is spelled correctly. Make sure everything's surrounded in quotes. Make sure you have your commas here, but not a trailing comma. So this is where a trailing comma does matter in terms of you do not want a trailing comma. Otherwise, it'll throw things off. So I have my data as JSON. I have my body. This is my message body. My method for my message for my request is post, sending it to /wine/create. If I hit send, fingers crossed. There we go. So ID number 16 should be high C. All right. So all of you guys should eventually be able to deploy your own APIs to the web. So that is something that you guys were practicing. Again, a lot of steps to it. I'll post my notes. So hopefully you guys take notes as we're doing it. And that is creating an API for the web. What questions do you guys have?
If we wanted to, let's say, update our project, is it just a git add, git commit, git push, or do we have to do the Heroku specific commands to update?
Seth, I'm glad you mentioned this. Let's actually, could you share your screen again, if you don't mind being our tester here? So what we've done, as I mentioned, is create a repository on Heroku side, which is totally fine. But we don't really have direct access to that repository, nor do we want to, because any changes we push to that is going to be instantaneously deployed to the web. So let's just get some Git practice here. Oh, what is Git reset? Okay, gotcha. All right, so Seth, could you go to your GitHub on your web browser? And these are just steps that I want you guys all to be familiar with. So for Seth's personal GitHub, when we get there. All right, let's create a new repository. So there's that new button. Yep. All right, give this project name. So again, this is what we're storing for Seth's personal projects. We're going to call it Seth Wine API or app. Sure. All right, so create that repository. Again, you guys will be doing this for yourselves. You guys are not committing to Seth's repository, to be clear. All right, copy that URL. There we go. Copy. All right, let's go back to your VS Code. All right, so we're going to create a copy of this on Seth's repository. So again, Heroku has a copy, but that is like the live production code. We don't always want to be making commits to the live production code. We want to make sure we test it. We want to have backups on GitHub. So here we do git remote add, and you want to give this destination a name. Usually we go with origin, but you could, yeah, you're gonna have to delete that. Sorry. So you want to give this like an alias. So usually we call it origin. You can name it whatever you want. So do origin and then that URL. So we're pointing another point, like a destination for our Git project. We have one destination already pointing at Heroku. This one's gonna be pointing at GitHub. So give that a run. All right, could you do git remote dash space dash v? All right, so this is what's listed. Notice we have two destinations now. If we do a git push Heroku, that's actually gonna send it to Heroku's repository. If we do git push origin, that's gonna commit it to Seth's local repository, or sorry, GitHub repository. So again, we can have multiple destinations for the same Git project. So if Seth wanted to commit this to his repository he just created, he could do a git push origin, that's gonna associate with GitHub. If he wants to make any changes to the Heroku project, he could do a git push Heroku. Let's say he wanted to add a new model or make a change to his data, whatever you want to do. If he wants that actually deployed, he'll do a git add, git commit, and then a git push to Heroku if he wanted to. Again, he does not need to, but that is how you get Heroku to update, by pushing to Heroku's repository. If you want to just get a backup or have something for your own sake, you want to push it to your GitHub and add a destination for it. Any questions about the Git stuff that we're covering here? Okay, I'm going to take that silence as everyone's either happy or totally lost. Which one is it?
More the latter than the first, but I think I'll be able to follow along.
Okay,
Video
yeah,
round number 2.
As always, you guys have a challenge. Let's talk about the challenges today. I'm going to stop